The train whistle screamed across the Texas plains as Tabitha Reeves pressed her sweating palms against the fabric of her best Sunday dress, watching the stranger, who was supposed to become her husband, step onto the platform at Tascosa Station in the scorching summer heat of 1883. She had spent 3 months exchanging letters with Michael Hendricks, a banker from Boston who claimed he wanted a fresh start out west and a wife to share it with. But the man who now stood before her wore an expression of barely concealed horror as his eyes traveled from her face down to her full figure and back again. "You are Tabitha Reeves." His voice carried the clipped accent of New England and something else underneath it, something cold that made her stomach clench. "I am." She lifted her chin, trying to ignore the way his lip curled slightly. "And you must be Michael Hendricks. Welcome to Tascosa." He did not take her offered hand. Instead, he turned to the station master, an elderly man named George who had known Tabitha since she was a girl. "Is there a hotel in this town? I need to think about my options." The words hit her like a physical blow, but she forced herself to remain standing straight, her shoulders back despite the humiliation burning through her veins. She had spent her last dollars on the fabric for this dress, had stayed up 3 nights sewing it by candlelight, had imagined this moment so differently. "The Tascosa Inn is just down the main street," George said quietly, his weathered face showing sympathy that made everything worse. "But Mr. Hendricks, perhaps you and Miss Reeves should talk somewhere private before you go making hasty decisions. I do not think there is much to discuss." Michael picked up his leather valise, brushing dust from his expensive coat. "The woman in the photograph you sent was considerably smaller than the reality standing before me, Miss Reeves. I came west for many things, but I did not come to be saddled with a wife who clearly cannot control her appetite. You are too fat for my tastes, and I suspect for the tastes of any respectable man." The platform seemed to tilt beneath Tabitha's feet. Around them, other passengers and townspeople had gone silent, their conversations dying as they registered what was happening. She could feel their eyes on her, could sense their pity and curiosity mixing in the hot afternoon air that shimmered above the dusty street. "That photograph was taken 6 months ago, and I have not changed." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I never lied to you about anything." "Perhaps not in words." He adjusted his hat, already turning away from her. "But clearly you knew how to angle yourself to hide the truth. I will be leaving on the next train back to civilized country. Consider our arrangement terminated." He walked away without another word, his boots clicking against the wooden platform as he headed toward the main street. Tabitha stood frozen, her hands now clenched so tightly that her short nails bit into her palms. The other people on the platform began to move again, their voices rising in whispers that she knew were about her, about this public rejection that would be the talk of Tascosa for months to come. "Miss Tabitha." George touched her elbow gently. "Do not let that fool get to you. He is not worth the air he breathes. I should get home." She could not look at him, could not bear to see the kindness in his old eyes. "My father will be wondering where I am." That was a lie. Her father had died 2 years ago, leaving her the small ranch on the outskirts of town, and a pile of debts she had been struggling to pay ever since. The ranch hand who had helped her father for 20 years had left 6 months ago to seek gold in Colorado, and she had been managing alone, rising before dawn to tend the cattle and horses, falling into bed each night with muscles screaming and hands blistered from work that was too much for one person. She had turned to the mail-order bride advertisements in desperation, hoping to find not just a husband but a partner who could help her keep the land her father had loved. She walked down the main street of Tascosa with her head high, even though she wanted to run and hide. The town had grown in recent years, sprawling along the Canadian River with its saloons and general stores, its blacksmith shop and church, its mix of cowboys and cattle barons and ordinary people trying to carve out lives in this hard country. She passed the Equity Bar, where she could hear piano music drifting through the open doors, and the office of the Tascosa Pioneer newspaper, where the editor's wife was hanging new curtains in the window. "Miss Reeves." A woman's voice called out, and Tabitha turned to see Martha Crawford hurrying across the street, her skirts kicking up small clouds of dust. Martha ran the general store with her husband and had always been kind to Tabitha, never gossiping about how she bought only the cheapest supplies or how she sometimes had to put purchases on credit until she sold cattle. "I heard what happened at the station." Martha's round face was flushed from hurrying in the heat. "That man is a fool and everyone knows it. Do not give him another thought." "That is easy to say." Tabitha's voice cracked despite her best efforts. "But I spent money I did not have on this dress, Martha. I thought I was getting married today. I thought I was going to have help with the ranch and maybe even a family someday. Instead, I am right back where I started, except now everyone in town knows that I was rejected for being too fat." Martha grabbed her hands, squeezing hard. "You listen to me, Tabitha Reeves. You are a beautiful woman with a good heart and a strong spirit. That fancy man from Boston could not handle a real Western woman if his life depended on it. He wants some fragile little thing he can control, not a partner who knows how to work and survive out here. You are better off without him." The words were meant to comfort, but they only made the ache in Tabitha's chest worse. She thanked Martha and continued walking, past the edge of town and out onto the dusty road that led to her ranch. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, turning her dress into a furnace and making sweat trickle down her spine. By the time she reached the weathered wooden gate that marked her property, her feet hurt and her head was pounding. The ranch house was small but sturdy, built from timber her father had hauled from the mountains years ago. The barn needed new paint, and the corral fence was patched in several places with rope, but the land itself was good, with access to the river and enough grazing for a decent herd. She had 30 head of cattle right now and 6 horses, including the old mare she had learned to ride on as a child. She changed out of the carefully sewn dress and into her work clothes, simple cotton trousers and a loose shirt that her mother would have been scandalized to see her wear. But her mother had died when Tabitha was 12, and there was no one to care about propriety now. She needed to check the cattle in the eastern pasture and make sure the water trough was still holding, because the last thing she could afford was for her animals to die of thirst during this brutal summer. She was saddling her horse when she heard hoofbeats approaching fast. She turned to see a rider coming down the road at a gallop, dust flying up behind him. As he got closer, she recognized Kade Patterson, a cowboy who worked for the large JA ranch that sprawled across thousands of acres north of Tascosa. She had seen him around town occasionally, a tall man with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of the summer sky, but they had never spoken beyond brief pleasantries. He reined in his horse, a beautiful chestnut gelding, and tipped his hat to her. "Miss Reeves, I hope I am not intruding." "That depends on why you are here." She kept her voice neutral, waiting for whatever this was about. Maybe one of her cattle had strayed onto JA land. That had happened once before, and the foreman had been decent about it. But she could not afford any trouble with the big ranchers who controlled most of the territory. Kade swung down from his horse with the easy grace of a man who had spent his whole life in the saddle. Up close, she could see he was probably in his mid-20s, maybe a year or two older than her own 23. He had a strong jaw and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, and there was something steady about him that made her instinctively trust him even though she knew better than to trust any man right now. I was in town picking up supplies when I saw what happened at the station. He spoke quietly, his voice carrying the slow drawl of someone who had grown up in Texas. I wanted to make sure you were all right. The unexpected kindness was almost worse than Martha's well-meaning platitudes. Tabitha felt her throat tighten dangerously and turned back to her horse, pretending to adjust the saddle. I am fine. It was just a misunderstanding. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a man being cruel because he is too small-minded to see what he had standing right in front of him. Kade moved closer, and she could smell horse and leather and something else, maybe sage from riding through the hills. He called you too fat, right there where everyone could hear. He is a fool, Miss Reeves. You are perfect as you are. The words hung in the hot air between them. Tabitha's hand stilled on the leather strap, and she turned slowly to look at him. His blue eyes were direct and honest, no hint of mockery or pity in them, just a straightforward statement of fact that made something flutter in her chest. You do not even know me. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Why would you ride all the way out here to say that? Because I have watched you in town these past months, working harder than any two men to keep this place running. I have seen you haul feed sacks that would make my back ache, and I have seen you handle horses that most people would be afraid to go near. I have seen you hold your head high, even when the banker's wife and her friends whisper about you wearing trousers instead of skirts. He took off his hat, running his fingers through his hair in a gesture that seemed almost nervous. And I have thought you were the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, every single time. Tabitha's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. You are just being kind because you feel sorry for me. No. He shook his head firmly. I am telling you the truth because someone needed to say it, and because I could not stand the thought of you believing what that Eastern fool said. You deserve better than him. You deserve someone who sees how strong and capable and beautiful you are. She wanted to believe him. She wanted it so desperately that it scared her. But Michael's words were still echoing in her mind, the disgust in his eyes when he looked at her body, the casual cruelty of his rejection. How could this cowboy, this man she barely knew, really think she was beautiful? I need to check on my cattle. She mounted her horse, needing to move to do something with the emotions churning through her. Thank you for riding out here, Mr. Patterson. It was kind of you. Can I come with you? The question was simple, with no demands or expectations behind it. I am good with cattle, and if you are managing this place alone, you could probably use an extra set of hands. She should say no. She should send him back to the JA ranch and forget about his kind words and steady eyes. But the truth was she did need help, and there was something about Kade Patterson that made her want to say yes, want to see what might happen if she let someone in instead of pushing them away. All right. She urged her horse forward, hearing him mount and follow behind her. But I warn you, it is going to be hot work. I am a cowboy in Texas during summer. Hot work is all I know. They rode out to the eastern pasture in silence, the only sounds the creak of saddle leather and the steady rhythm of hoofbeats. The land spread out around them in shades of brown and gold, punctuated by scrub brush and the occasional cottonwood tree. In the distance, the Canadian River glinted like a silver ribbon, and beyond that rose the caprock formations that gave this part of Texas its distinctive character. The cattle were grazing peacefully near the river, and Tabitha counted them automatically as they approached, making sure none were missing. Kade rode the perimeter of the herd, his practiced eye checking for any signs of injury or illness. They worked together naturally, and Tabitha found herself relaxing despite the strange circumstances of the day. "Water trough looks good," Kade called out after checking the wooden structure that she had built herself last month. "You did a solid job with this. My father taught me." She guided her horse over to where he waited. He always said a rancher needed to know how to fix anything that broke, because there might not be anyone else around to do it. "He taught you well." Cade's eyes moved over the land appraisingly. "This is good property, Miss Reeves. With the right help, you could build it into something really special. That was always the dream." She looked out at the cattle, at the land that represented her father's life work and her own uncertain future. "But dreams cost money, and I am barely keeping my head above water as it is. I thought marrying Michael Hendricks might be the answer, but I suppose I was fooling myself." "You were trying to survive." Cade's voice was gentle. "That is not foolish, it is brave. But you deserve a real partner, not some banker who wants a decorative wife he can show off to his friends." They rode back to the ranch house as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Tabitha unsaddled her horse and led it into the barn, very aware of Kade doing the same with his chestnut gelding. The barn was dim and cool after the heat of the day, smelling of hay and animals and old wood. "I should probably get back to the JA," Kade said, but he made no move to leave. "But I want to ask you something first, if that is all right." "What is it?" Tabitha hung up her saddle, her hands suddenly unsteady. "Can I come back tomorrow? Not to check on you or because I feel sorry for you, but because I would like to help you with the ranch and get to know you better." He turned his hat in his hands, a gesture she was starting to recognize as a sign of nervousness. "I know today was hard, and you probably need time to recover from what happened. But I also do not want to waste any more time pretending I do not notice you when I see you in town, or that I have not been trying to work up the courage to talk to you for months." Tabitha stared at him, her mind struggling to process his words. "You wanted to talk to me? Before today?" "Since the first time I saw you at the general store, arguing with a supplier who was trying to cheat you on the price of feed. You did not back down even though he was twice your size and yelling loud enough to shake the windows. You stood your ground and made him see reason, and I thought you were the most impressive person I had ever met." Kade smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something warm and inviting. "I wanted to introduce myself that day, but I lost my nerve. Figured a woman like you would not be interested in a cowboy who spends most of his time sleeping under the stars and smelling like cattle, as opposed to a banker from Boston who thinks I am too fat." The words came out bitter, but Kade did not flinch. "That banker is a fool who will go back east and live a small, comfortable life without ever understanding what he missed. But I am not him, Miss Reeves. I see you clearly, and I like everything I see. So if you will let me, I would like to come back tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day you will have me." She should be cautious. She should protect her heart after the brutal rejection she had suffered just hours ago. But looking at Kade Patterson in the dim light of the barn, seeing the sincerity in his blue eyes and the hope in his expression, Tabitha felt something shift inside her. Maybe she deserved to take a chance on something real, instead of settling for whatever scraps life threw her way. "You can come back tomorrow." Her voice was soft but steady. "I could use help fixing the fence in the north pasture if you are serious about wanting to work." "I am serious about everything I have said today." Kade settled his hat back on his head, his smile widening. "I will be here at dawn, ready to work. And Miss Reeves, thank you for giving me this chance." He left before she could respond, swinging up onto his horse and riding off into the approaching twilight. Tabitha stood in the barn doorway watching him go, her heart feeling lighter than it had in months despite the disaster of the morning. Maybe Martha had been right. Maybe Michael Hendricks was a fool, and maybe being rejected by him was the best thing that could have happened. She went into the house and lit the lamps, moving through the familiar rooms that still held traces of her parents' presence. Her mother's sewing basket sat in the corner of the main room. Her father's pipe rack hung above the fireplace, even though the pipes had long since been smoked. She had been alone here for 2 years, managing everything by herself and trying to be strong enough to handle it all. But maybe she did not have to be alone anymore. That night, she lay in bed listening to the coyotes howling in the distance and thinking about blue eyes and kind words, and the way Kade had looked at her like she was something precious. She thought about how he had ridden all the way to her ranch just to make sure she was all right, how he had offered to help without expecting anything in return, how he had called her perfect when the rest of the day had tried to convince her she was not. When dawn came, painting the sky with soft pink and gold, Tabitha rose and dressed in her work clothes. She made coffee and biscuits, then went out to start her morning chores. She was mucking out stalls when she heard hoofbeats and looked up to see Kade riding in, true to his word. He was wearing work clothes similar to hers, practical and worn, and he carried tools strapped to his saddle. "Morning, Miss Reeves." He dismounted and started unloading his gear. "I brought extra wire and some better fence posts. Figured we might as well do the job right." "You did not have to bring supplies." She felt embarrassed that he had spent money on her ranch. "I can pay you back when I sell some cattle next month. This is not about money." Kade met her eyes directly. "This is about neighbors helping neighbors, and maybe about a man trying to show a woman he is serious about his intentions. So just say thank you and show me where this fence needs fixing." She wanted to argue, but the stubborn set of his jaw told her it would be pointless. "Thank you." "And the fence is about a mile north, near where the property line meets the creek." They rode out together, and Tabitha found herself telling him about the ranch, about her father's dreams and her own struggles to keep everything going. Kade listened without interrupting, asking intelligent questions that showed he understood the challenges of ranching in this harsh country. The fence was in worse shape than she had remembered, with several posts rotted through, and the wire sagging dangerously in places. They worked side by side under the climbing sun, digging out old posts and sinking new ones, stretching wire tight and securing it properly. It was hard, sweaty work, and Tabitha was grateful for Kade's strength when they had to maneuver the heavier posts into position. "Your father built this ranch from nothing?" Kade asked during a brief water break, wiping sweat from his forehead. "He came to Texas in 1865, right after the war ended. He had nothing but a horse and determination." Tabitha drank from her canteen, the lukewarm water tasting like heaven. "He worked for other ranchers for years, saving every penny until he could buy this land. My mother came west with him, and they built the house together. She died when I was 12, and it was just me and my father after that. He taught me everything he knew about ranching, never treated me differently because I was a girl. He sounds like a good man. He was the best." Her throat tightened with grief that still felt fresh sometimes. "When he died, I promised myself I would keep this place going no matter what. But it has been harder than I expected. It is too much for one person." Kade hammered in a staple, his movements efficient and practiced. "Even experienced ranchers struggle to manage alone. You have been doing the impossible, Miss Reeves, and you should be proud of that." They worked until early afternoon when the heat became too intense to continue safely. Kade had brought food in his saddlebags, bread and cheese and dried beef that they ate sitting in the shade of a cottonwood tree near the creek. The water burbled softly over rocks, and a breeze stirred the leaves above them, providing momentary relief from the temperature. Can I ask you something personal? Kade's voice was hesitant. You can tell me to mind my own business if you want. Ask. Tabitha was learning to trust him, this quiet cowboy who had appeared in her life at exactly the moment she needed someone. Why did you turn to mail-order marriage? A woman like you could have your pick of men right here in Tascosa. She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Have you looked at me, Kade? I'm not exactly what most men are looking for. I am too tall, too heavy, too strong. I wear trousers and I know how to brand cattle and break horses. The men in Tascosa want delicate women who will stay home and do needlework, not partners who can outwork them on the ranch. Then the men in Tascosa are idiots. Kade's voice was fierce. Everything you just described makes you more attractive, not less, at least to any man worth having. Michael Hendricks did not think so. I told you yesterday, and I will keep telling you until you believe it. Michael Hendricks is a fool who does not deserve another second of your thoughts. Kade shifted closer, and she could feel the warmth of his body even in the shade. You are beautiful, Tabitha. You are strong and capable and smart and brave. Your body is perfect exactly as it is because it allows you to do the work you love and live the life you want. Any man who cannot see that is blind. Hearing her name on his lips sent a shiver through her despite the heat. You really believe that? I have never been more certain of anything in my life. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away and brushed a strand of hair back from her face. His fingers were calloused and gentle, and the touch made her breath catch. I know this is fast. I know you just met me yesterday and you have no reason to trust me. But I need you to understand that I see you, Tabitha Reeves. Not the version of you that someone else thinks you should be, but the real you. And I am in awe of what I see. She had never had a man look at her the way Kade was looking at her now, like she was something miraculous and rare. Michael had looked at her with contempt. Other men in town had looked through her as if she did not exist, but Kade saw her, really saw her. And the intensity of his gaze made her feel vulnerable and powerful at the same time. I do not know what to say. Her voice came out shaky. Yesterday I thought I was getting married, and instead I was humiliated in front of the whole town. Today you are telling me things I have wanted to hear my whole life, and I do not know if I should believe them. Then let me prove it to you. Kade did not look away, did not let her hide. Let me come back every day and help you with the ranch. Let me show you through actions, not just words, that I mean everything I am saying. And maybe if you start to trust me, we can see where this goes. Where what goes? But she knew what he meant, could feel it in the air between them like electricity before a storm. This connection between us. This feeling I have had since the first time I saw you, like I have been waiting my whole life to meet you. This certainty that you are the woman I am supposed to be with. He smiled, a little self-deprecating. I know it sounds crazy. I know I should be more cautious and proper about this. But I am a cowboy, not a gentleman, and I believe in speaking the truth even when it is inconvenient. Tabitha's heart was racing, her mind spinning with possibilities and fears. But underneath all of that was a growing sense of rightness, a feeling that this was exactly where she was supposed to be and Kade was exactly who she was supposed to be with. You can come back tomorrow. The words felt momentous, like she was agreeing to more than just another day of fence mending. And the day after that, and we will see what happens. Kade's smile was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. That is all I am asking for, a chance to prove myself to you. They finished the fence work and rode back to the ranch as the afternoon stretched toward evening. Kade helped her with the evening chores, feeding the horses and checking on the cattle in the near pasture. They worked together with an easy rhythm that felt natural, like they had been doing this for years instead of just 2 days. When it was time for him to leave, They stood by the corral watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of red and purple. Kade's horse was saddled and ready, but he seemed reluctant to go. "Thank you for today." Tabitha found herself reaching out to touch his arm, a bold gesture that felt right. "For the help with the fence, for the food, for everything you said. I have not felt this hopeful in a long time." "Then I will see you tomorrow, and I will do my best to make you feel even more hopeful." He covered her hand with his own, the touch sending warmth through her entire body. "Sleep well, Tabitha." He rode off into the gathering darkness, and she watched until he disappeared from sight. Then she went into the house and sat at her father's old desk, pulling out paper and ink. She needed to write to Michael Hendricks in care of the Tascosa Inn, formally releasing him from their agreement and wishing him well on his journey back to Boston. It should have felt like a defeat, writing that letter, but instead it felt like freedom. The next days fell into a pattern that Tabitha had never experienced before but quickly grew to love. Kade arrived at dawn each morning, and they worked on different projects around the ranch. They repaired the barn roof that had been leaking, fixed a broken section of corral fence, cleared brush from the watering areas. He was strong and skilled and never complained, even when the work was difficult or uncomfortable. More than that, he talked to her like an equal, asking her opinion on every decision and respecting her knowledge of her own land. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch of the ranch house and watch the sunset, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up on a small farm in East Texas, about losing both parents to fever when he was 16, and making his way west to find work. She told him about her childhood on the ranch, about her mother's kindness and her father's quiet strength, about the loneliness of the past 2 years. "You ever want more than this?" Kade asked one evening, gesturing at the ranch spread out before them. "A bigger place, more cattle, hired hands to do the hard work." "Sometimes." Tabitha considered the question seriously. "But mostly I just want to keep what I have and maybe make it a little better each year. I want to honor my father's legacy and prove that a woman can run a ranch just as well as any man." "You have already proved that." Kade's voice was warm with admiration. "Anyone with eyes can see what you have accomplished here. Not Michael Hendricks." She said the name without bitterness now, just as a statement of fact. "He could not see past my body to the person inside it. Then he missed out on knowing an extraordinary woman." Kade turned to face her directly. "Tabitha, I need to tell you something, and I do not want you to feel pressured by it, but I also cannot keep pretending these are just casual feelings." Her heart started to pound. "What are you trying to say?" "I am falling in love with you." The words were simple and direct, very much like Kade himself. "I know it has only been a week since we started spending time together, but I have never been more certain of anything. When I am with you, I feel like I am exactly where I am supposed to be. When I am not with you, I am counting the hours until I can see you again. You are in my thoughts from the moment I wake up until I fall asleep at night." Tabitha could barely breathe. Everything she had wanted to hear, everything she had convinced herself she would never have, was being offered to her by this kind, strong, beautiful man. "Kade, you do not have to say anything back." He held up a hand, forestalling her. "I am not expecting you to feel the same way yet. I just needed you to know where I stand, what my intentions are. I want to court you properly, Tabitha. I want to earn your trust and your heart, and eventually, if you will have me, I want to marry you and spend the rest of my life helping you run this ranch and building a future together." "You want to marry me?" She heard the disbelief in her own voice. "Even though I am too fat and too strong and too independent," Kade reached out and took her hands, his grip firm and warm. "I want to marry you because you are strong and independent and beautiful exactly as you are." I want to marry you because you make me laugh and challenge me to think differently and inspire me to be a better man. I want to marry you because when I imagine my future, you are in every single moment of it. Tears pricked at Tabitha's eyes, but they were good tears this time, tears of joy instead of humiliation. I am falling in love with you too. I have been trying not to, trying to protect myself because I was so hurt by what Michael said and did. But every day you come here and work beside me and talk to me like I matter, and I fall a little more. You make me feel seen and valued and beautiful, and I have never felt those things before. You are all of those things. Kade lifted her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. And I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you know it. They sat together on the porch as night fell completely, stars beginning to appear in the vast Texas sky. Kade put his arm around her shoulders and she leaned into him, feeling safe and cherished in a way she had never imagined possible. A week ago she had been waiting at the train station for a man who would reject her cruelly in front of the whole town. Now she was sitting with a man who loved her exactly as she was, who saw her strength as an asset rather than a flaw, who wanted to build a life with her rather than trying to change her into something she was not. I should probably go back to the JA soon. Kade's voice was reluctant. I have been neglecting my duties there to spend time here. Have you gotten in trouble? Tabitha felt guilty suddenly. She had been so focused on her own needs and wants that she had not considered how his daily visits might be affecting his employment. Not yet, but the foreman has been giving me looks, Kade smiled. I have been doing my essential work and then making excuses about why I need to leave early or arrive late. I think he suspects I am courting someone, but he has not said anything yet. Maybe you should tell him the truth. Tabitha turned to look at Kade's face in the dim light. I do not want you to lose your job because of me. I am not going to lose my job, and even if I did, it would be worth it to spend this time with you. He brushed a kiss against her forehead, the touch gentle and sweet. But you are right that I should probably be honest with him. Maybe I can arrange to have some time off, or work out a different schedule that gives me more flexibility. Or you could come work here full time. The words came out before Tabitha could think them through, but once they were spoken she realized she meant them completely. The ranch needs help, and you clearly enjoy the work. I cannot pay you what the JA does, at least not at first, but we could be partners in building this place up. Eventually, there would be enough profit to make it worthwhile. Kade was quiet for a long moment, and Tabitha felt anxiety creeping in. Maybe she had overstepped, assumed too much too fast. But then he spoke, his voice thick with emotion. Are you offering me a job or something more? Both, I think. Tabitha turned to face him fully. I am saying that I want you here, working beside me every day. I am saying that I trust you with my father's legacy and my own future. And I am saying that when you are ready to ask me to marry you properly, the answer will be yes. Kade's answering kiss was everything Tabitha had dreamed of, but never thought she would have. It was tender and passionate and full of promise, his hands cupping her face like she was something precious and rare. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard, and Tabitha's heart felt like it might burst from happiness. I love you, Tabitha Reeves. Kade rested his forehead against hers. And yes, I will come work on the ranch. I will give the JA 2 weeks' notice so they have time to find a replacement, and then I am yours for as long as you want me. Forever might be a good start. She smiled, feeling light and free and more alive than she had in years. We can figure out the details later, but right now I just want to enjoy this moment. They stayed on the porch until late into the night, talking and kissing and making plans for their future. Kade finally left when the moon was high in the sky, riding back to the JA ranch with promises to return first thing in the morning. Tabitha went to bed feeling like her life had transformed completely in the space of just over a week. The next morning, Kade arrived with news that made everything even better. The JA foreman had been surprisingly understanding when Kade explained the situation, and rather than making him work 2 weeks' notice, had simply wished him well and told him to come back if he ever needed work in the future. The other cowboys had ribbed him good-naturedly about being tamed by a woman, but Kade had just smiled and told them he was the luckiest man in Texas. "So I am officially unemployed and all yours." Kade was grinning as he unloaded his belongings from his horse. He had brought everything he owned, which fit into 2 saddlebags and a bedroll. "Where do you want me to sleep? I was thinking the barn until we get properly married, so as not to damage your reputation. The barn is full of hay and mice." Tabitha had thought about this already. "There is a small room off the kitchen that my father used for storage. We can clear it out and put a bed in there. It is not fancy, but it will be warmer in winter and cooler in summer than the barn." They spent the morning making the room habitable, hauling out old crates and broken tools, sweeping away years of dust and cobwebs. Kade brought in his bedroll and the few personal items he owned, and suddenly the house felt different, more alive with his presence in it. That afternoon, they rode into Tascosa together to pick up supplies and to make their relationship public. Tabitha had been dreading this moment, afraid that people would whisper about how quickly she had moved on from Michael Hendricks, or make cruel comments about her catching a cowboy on the rebound. But when they walked down the main street side by side, Kade's hand resting protectively on the small of her back, the reactions were surprisingly positive. Martha came out of the general store and hugged Tabitha hard. "I knew that Eastern fool was not the right man for you. Kade Patterson is worth 10 of him." George at the train station tipped his hat respectfully. "Glad to see you found someone who appreciates you, Miss Reeves." Even the banker's wife, who usually looked down her nose at Tabitha, managed a stiff nod of acknowledgement. The general consensus seemed to be that Michael Hendricks had behaved badly, and that Kade was a much better match for a woman like Tabitha. They had lunch at the restaurant attached to the Tascosa Inn, sitting by the window and talking about their plans for the ranch. Kade had ideas about rotating pastures to improve grazing and maybe buying a breeding bull to improve the quality of the herd. Tabitha shared her thoughts about expanding the horse operation, since she had a good eye for bloodlines and could train mounts that would sell for premium prices. "We could be really successful if we worked together." Kade's eyes were bright with enthusiasm. "Your knowledge of the land combined with my experience with cattle and horses, we could build something special. I think we already have." Tabitha reached across the table to take his hand, not caring who saw. "The ranch is important, but what we have between us matters more." "Agreed." Kade lifted her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "Everything else is just details. As long as we are together, I do not care if we end up with 10,000 head of cattle or just the 30 we have now." They were walking back to where they had tied their horses when a familiar voice called out, "Miss Reeves, a moment, please." Tabitha turned to see Michael Hendricks standing in front of the hotel, his valise at his feet. He looked uncomfortable but determined, his expensive suit dusty from travel. "Mr. Hendricks." Tabitha kept her voice neutral, very aware of Kade tensing beside her. "I thought you would have left Tascosa by now." "I should have. The train comes through in an hour and I will be on it." Michael shifted his weight, not quite meeting her eyes. "But I needed to speak with you first. I owe you an apology." "You do not owe me anything." Tabitha wanted this conversation to be over. "Our arrangement is terminated just as you wished. There is nothing more to say." "There is, actually." Michael finally looked directly at her, and she saw shame in his expression. What I said to you at the train station was unforgivable. You were honest with me in our correspondence, and I responded with cruelty because I was disappointed that you were not the decorative wife I had imagined. I have spent the past week thinking about my behavior, and I am ashamed of myself. As you should be. Kade's voice was hard. You humiliated her in public and made her feel like there was something wrong with her when the only thing wrong was your small mind and cruel tongue. I know. Michael nodded, accepting the rebuke. Miss Reeves, I do not expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I recognize how badly I behaved, and that you deserve far better than what I offered. I hope you find happiness, and from the looks of things, I think perhaps you already have. He picked up his valise and walked away without waiting for a response, heading toward the train station. Tabitha watched him go, feeling a strange mixture of emotions. Part of her wanted to hate him for what he had done, but mostly she just felt grateful that things had worked out the way they did. Are you all right? Kade asked softly, his arm sliding around her waist. I am perfect. She leaned into him, meaning every word. A week ago his words devastated me. Now I realize he did me a favor by showing his true colors before I made the mistake of marrying him. If he had not been so cruel, I might never have met you. Then I should probably thank him. Kade smiled, the tension leaving his body. But I will not, because he still deserves to feel guilty for how he treated you. They rode back to the ranch in comfortable silence, the afternoon sun warm on their shoulders. Tabitha felt like her life had finally clicked into place, like all the struggles and loneliness of the past 2 years had been leading her to this moment, this man, this future that was opening up before her. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hard work and growing intimacy. They worked side by side every day, improving the ranch bit by bit. Kade proved to be everything Tabitha needed in a partner, strong when strength was required, but also willing to listen to her ideas and defer to her knowledge of the land. He never tried to take over or act like the ranch was his to command. Instead, he treated it as a shared enterprise, always asking her opinion and respecting her decisions. At night, they would sit on the porch and talk for hours, learning everything about each other. Tabitha told him about her childhood dreams of becoming a teacher, before her mother died and she was needed on the ranch full-time. Kade shared stories about his years as a cowboy, driving cattle up the trails to Kansas, sleeping under the stars, learning to survive in a hard country that did not forgive mistakes. You ever miss that life? Tabitha asked one evening, watching fireflies dance in the growing darkness. The freedom of being on the trail, not tied down to one place, not even a little bit. Kade pulled her closer against his side. That life was lonely, Tabitha. I was always searching for something without knowing what it was. Now I have found it, found you, and I never want to leave. 2 months after they met, on a warm evening in September when the brutal heat of summer was finally giving way to cooler temperatures, Kade led Tabitha out to the corral where he had been working with a young horse. The animal was beautiful, a Palomino mare with intelligent eyes and a gentle disposition. I have been training her for you. Kade's voice was nervous in a way Tabitha had never heard before. She is smart and willing, and I think she will be the best horse you have ever owned. But she is also more than that. What do you mean? Tabitha stroked the mare's golden neck, feeling the animal lean into her touch. Her name is Promise because she represents the promise I want to make to you. Kade took Tabitha's hand, pulling her attention away from the horse. Tabitha Reeves, you are the strongest, most beautiful, most amazing woman I have ever known. You have shown me what it means to be truly brave, to keep fighting even when everything seems impossible. You have taught me about perseverance and hope, and what real partnership looks like. He dropped to one knee in the dust of the corral, pulling a simple gold ring from his pocket. I do not have much to offer you except my heart and my hands and my promise to love you for the rest of my life. But if you will have me, I will spend every day trying to be worthy of you. Tabitha, will you marry me? Tears were streaming down Tabitha's face, but she was smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. Kade stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed with pure joy. When he set her down, he slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her with all the passion and love he had been holding back, respecting her need to take things slowly. I love you so much. Tabitha held his face in her hands, looking into his blue eyes that had become so dear to her. You came into my life at my lowest moment and showed me what it means to be truly seen and loved. You are everything I never thought I could have. You are everything I did not even know I was looking for. Kade kissed her again, softer this time. And I cannot wait to spend the rest of my life with you. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Tascosa, with half the town in attendance. Martha stood up with Tabitha, and one of Kade's friends from the JA ranch served as his best man. Tabitha wore a new dress, this one made by Martha with Kade's money, though he had refused to tell Tabitha how much it cost. It was beautiful, fitted to her body without trying to hide her curves, made from blue fabric that matched Kade's eyes. As they stood at the altar and exchanged vows, Tabitha thought about Michael Hendricks and his cruel words on the train platform. He had called her too fat, had looked at her with disgust, had rejected her publicly and viciously. But if he had not done that, she would never have known the joy of being loved by Kade Patterson, a man who saw her clearly and loved everything he saw. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The preacher's voice rang out in the small church. You may kiss your bride. Kade did not need to be told twice. He pulled Tabitha into his arms and kissed her soundly while the congregation cheered and clapped. When they finally pulled apart, both of them laughing and breathless, Tabitha felt like the luckiest woman in Texas. The reception was held in the town hall, with food and music and dancing that went late into the night. Kade never left Tabitha's side, his arm always around her waist or his hand holding hers, making sure everyone knew how proud he was to call her his wife. They danced together under paper lanterns, and Tabitha felt beautiful in a way she had never experienced before, not because her body had changed, but because Kade looked at her like she was the most gorgeous woman in the world. They rode back to the ranch in the dark, side by side on their horses, the September stars brilliant overhead. When they reached the ranch house, Kade dismounted and lifted Tabitha down from her mare, holding her against his chest for a long moment. "Welcome home, Mrs. Patterson." His voice was rough with emotion. "Are you ready to start our life together? I have been ready since the day you rode out here to tell me I was perfect as I am." Tabitha kissed him, putting all her love and hope and joy into it. "Take me inside, husband. Our future is waiting." That night, they consummated their marriage in the bedroom that had once belonged to Tabitha's parents. The room she had prepared carefully with new linens and wildflowers from the prairie. Kade was gentle and passionate, and everything Tabitha had hoped for, treating her body with reverence and making her feel cherished in a way that went beyond the physical. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, talking softly about their dreams for the ranch and their future children, and all the years they would have together. "Thank you." Tabitha rested her head on Kade's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "For seeing me when everyone else was looking through me, for loving me when I thought I was unlovable, for showing me what it means to be truly happy. You never needed me to make you worthy, Tabitha. You were always extraordinary." Kade's fingers traced gentle patterns on her shoulder. I am just grateful that you let me be part of your life." The years that followed were everything they had hoped for and more. The ranch prospered under their joint management, growing from 30 head of cattle to over 100, with a thriving horse operation that supplied quality mounts throughout the Texas Panhandle. They built a new barn and expanded the house, adding rooms for the children they hoped to have. Their first child arrived in the summer of 1885, a boy they named Robert after Tabitha's father. He had Kade's blue eyes and Tabitha's determination, and from the moment he was born, he seemed to understand that he was loved beyond measure. Kade was a natural father, patient and playful, teaching his son about horses and cattle, and the land with the same gentle respect he had always shown Tabitha. 2 years later, a daughter joined the family, a girl with auburn curls and a smile that could light up the darkest room. They named her Rose after Tabitha's mother, and she grew up riding horses before she could walk properly, fearless and strong like her mother. Then came another boy, then another girl, until the ranch house was filled with the sound of children's laughter and the chaos of a busy, happy family. Through it all, Kade never stopped telling Tabitha she was beautiful. He never made her feel like she needed to change or be different than she was. When she gained weight during her pregnancies and did not lose all of it afterwards, he told her she was even more gorgeous than before. When she worried about the lines appearing on her face or the gray starting to show in her hair, he kissed her and told her she was aging like fine wine, becoming more lovely with each passing year. You ever think about that day at the train station? Tabitha asked one evening many years later, sitting on the porch with Kade while their children played in the yard, about Michael Hendricks and what he said, sometimes. Kade pulled her closer, his arm strong and steady around her shoulders. But only to think whatever fate brought him into your life just so he could be stupid enough to reject you, which meant I got my chance. He did me a favor. Tabitha watched their oldest son teaching their youngest daughter how to rope a fence post. If he had been kind, if he had married me like he was supposed to, I would have spent my whole life with the wrong person. I would never have known what real love feels like. I was the lucky one. Kade turned her face toward his blue eyes still as clear and honest as they had been the first day he rode out to her ranch. I got to spend my life with the most incredible woman in Texas. I got to wake up every morning next to someone who challenges me and inspires me and makes me laugh. I got to build a life and a family with you, and there is nothing in the world I would trade that for. Not even a decorative wife from Boston, Tabitha teased, but there was no pain in the joke anymore, just the comfort of shared history and inside references. Especially not that. Kade kissed her softly. I will take my strong, capable, beautiful Texas wife over anything else the world has to offer. You are perfect, Tabitha Patterson. You always have been and you always will be. As the sun set over the ranch they had built together, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Tabitha thought about how different her life might have been. If Michael Hendricks had not been cruel, if Kade had not ridden out to check on her, if she had not had the courage to take a chance on something real instead of settling for what was safe and expected. But fate, or luck, or divine providence had brought them together, and she had spent every day since grateful for the rejection that had seemed like the worst thing in the world, but had actually been the best thing that ever happened to her. The years continued to roll by, marked by cattle drives and harvest seasons, by children growing up and learning to run the ranch themselves, by quiet moments on the porch watching sunsets and talking about everything and nothing. Tabitha and Kade grew older together, their bodies wearing the marks of hard work and good living, their love deepening with each passing year until it was as much a part of them as breathing. When Tabitha was 45 and Kade was 47, they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with a party at the ranch. All their children were there, some of them married now with children of their own. Friends came from all over the panhandle, packing the ranch house and spilling out into the yard. There was food and music and dancing, laughter ringing out under the Texas stars. 20 years ago, I was standing on a train platform being rejected by a man who thought I was too fat to marry. Tabitha stood beside Kade, addressing their guests. I thought my life was over, that I would spend forever alone and struggling. But then this man rode out to my ranch and told me something I needed to hear. He said Hendricks was a fool and that I was perfect as I was. He showed me what real love looks like, what true partnership means. He gave me everything I never thought I could have, and I am grateful every single day that I was brave enough to believe him. I told you the truth that day, and it is still true now. Kade raised his glass in a toast. You are perfect, Tabitha. You always have been and you always will be, and I am the luckiest man in the world because you chose to spend your life with me. The party continued late into the night, but eventually everyone left or found places to sleep, and Tabitha and Kade were alone on their porch once again. The moon was full and bright, illuminating the land that had been Tabitha's inheritance and had become their shared legacy. No regrets. Kade asked softly, his hand finding hers in the darkness. Not a single one. Tabitha squeezed his fingers, feeling the calluses that matched her own, evidence of decades spent working side by side. You gave me everything I ever wanted and things I did not even know to dream about. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable, and you taught me what it means to be truly seen. How could I have any regrets? Good. Kade pulled her close, kissing her temple. Because I intend to spend the next 20 years and beyond proving to you over and over again that you made the right choice in marrying me. You have already proven that. Tabitha rested her head on his shoulder, feeling completely content, but I am happy to let you keep trying. They sat together in comfortable silence, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the ashes of rejection and humiliation. The ranch stretched out around them, a testament to hard work and love and partnership. Inside the house, their children and grandchildren slept peacefully, the next generation who would carry on the legacy they had created together. Tabitha thought about the girl she had been, standing on that train platform waiting for a man who would crush her spirit with casual cruelty. She thought about the woman she had become, strong and confident and deeply loved. The journey between those two moments had been difficult sometimes, but it had brought her to exactly where she was meant to be. And as she sat there with Kade's arm around her and the Texas stars wheeling overhead, Tabitha Patterson knew with absolute certainty that she was perfect exactly as she was, and that the cowboy who had told her so all those years ago was the greatest gift she had ever received. Their love story had begun with rejection and kindness, and it would continue until their last breaths, a testament to the power of seeing someone truly and loving them completely, exactly as they are.